everybody. Welcome back to IS325, the Contemporary Muslim World. It's me, Professor Smith, back after several modules off while my colleagues presented their material. I'm happy to be back with you today to talk about popular culture in the Muslim world. And as I get going, I want to first say thank you. Yes, I did get a haircut. I appreciate you noticing. So, popular culture in the Muslim world is not a topic we included in the original iteration of this class. So when we first designed the class, we fell into kind of a classic trap that a lot of academics fall into, frankly. Not all, but a lot of academics do, where you're looking at sort of big picture questions, and you forget that sometimes the stuff that's the most important can be the stuff that's the most important to the most people in that culture or place. So it doesn't mean maybe that you exclusively look at popular culture or sports, which is another module I'll cover with you later in the semester, but it does mean you include it. And that's very much because it's a popular interest, and things that are popular interest tend to be things that also influence and are influenced by the society around them. There are also things that are importable and exportable. So you're talking about ideas that may come into the Muslim world from outside and get incorporated, or things that may go from the Muslim world outside and be incorporated there. So there's a lot of dynamics at play when you're looking at popular culture, and I look forward to reviewing some of them with you today. Before we get into some examples of things in the Muslim world from film, from television, from music, and some others, I want to start here with the OIC again. This is the same quote from the OIC Charter I've shared with you a couple of times already before. They're supposed to safeguard the rights, dignity, and religious and cultural identity of Muslim communities and minorities in non-member states, which means they're interested in the portrayal of Muslims in media abroad. One of the things that bothers lots of minority groups in other majority cultures is the way they're portrayed and the way they often fill roles of the downtrodden, the villain, the distasteful in a media. Some of you may have heard of the Bechdel test. This is something that's applied to sort of judge whether a work of fiction has a good representation of women in it, and if women are there for more than just romantic interest, then it does better on the Bechdel test. There's something called the Riz test that was developed by some observers of cultural representation of Muslims not too long ago, and what they're interested in seeing is whether Muslims play something other than the terrorist or the religious conservative or something else. They have a more of a robust life. And so I got a reading in this unit for you to read to consider that. It doesn't come from the OIC specifically, but it does come from sort of the wider community of Muslims interested in how they're portrayed. The OIC has some specific interests. For example, there is an attempt to talk about a cultural strategy for the Muslim world. There was a December 2018 conference, this is a picture from that, where the OIC got together with their ministers and say, okay, what kind of strategies do we need to make sure that we're promoted and represented in a way that's in keeping with our desires around the world? A couple of countries within the OIC proposed in late 2019, this would be Turkey and Pakistan and Malaysia, that they should develop sort of a shared television network that would work on positive portrayals of Muslims in media around the world, which hasn't gone anywhere since COVID started, but it's an interesting kind of idea. One of the things they decided at that 2018 conference is that they would give an award to try and sort of bring a better highlight to some work of lesser-known filmmakers around the world. So Fespaco is a film and television festival akin to something like the Sundance Film Festival or the Cannes Film Festival, but this recognizes the work of African filmmakers. It's held in Ouagadougou, which is the capital of Burkina Faso, each year. And so in 2019, the OIC gave a big prize to a filmmaker who was Burkinabe from Burkina Faso for their work, and it is just an attempt by the OIC to get involved in a different sort of way. So it's not one of the main outreach arms of the OIC at this point, but they're thinking about it, and they're thinking about how to use popular culture to leverage sort of knowledge about them, knowledge about their goals, and as a way to get more positive representations out there. Really, though, if we want to talk about popular culture in the Muslim world, we're going to start with film here. So there's, we've all heard of Hollywood. There's two other major hubs of filmmaking. There's several others, but the two other major ones are Bollywood, which is in India, and Nollywood, which is in Nigeria. So both India and Nigeria have significant Muslim populations. And in fact, Bollywood which has Shahrukh Khan as their most popular actor. He's a Muslim, and he's a Muslim in a largely Hindu society. And this picture of a group of Bollywood actors, very famous actors, who are with the Prime Minister Modi, who's a Hindu nationalist. And it's a very interesting dynamic between people outside India who would like to see the Muslim film stars, who are very popular and very influential, take a stronger stand against the Hinduization of India, and make sure that that Muslims have a better representation, not in film but in the rest of society. So this criticism of Shahrukh Khan, who is estimated is the most popular film star, and that might mean the most popular person in the entire world, is a Muslim man from India. It's estimated he has 3.5 billion people who count themselves fans of his. That's a jaw-dropping number. And if you've got time and you have a Netflix account, I've got a link in this unit where you can watch David Letterman's really interesting and excellent 1-hour interview with him on your own time. Not a required part of the unit, but one that could show you some interesting ideas about someone who's, like I say, maybe the most popular human being on the planet. Nollywood is in Africa and Nigeria. It produces actually the most total number of films in any given year. Bollywood has one of the highest volumes of money spent. Now, number 2 the last time I saw, although they're all closed down in 2020 for COVID. Nollywood in Nigeria struggles a little bit to figure out the same thing that Bollywood does, and that is, what's the role for the society that is part Christian in Nigeria and part Muslim, and what films should be in English that are designed for the Anglophone Africa, and what films should be in other languages that are for external audiences. And so both Bollywood and Nollywood struggle with that a little bit, but the question is always then, what's the relationship and the portrayal of Muslims in states that are struggling to define themselves? So Nigeria is part of the OIC, but it is a state that has as much as 50%, sometimes a little bit more, Christian population, and so it's an interesting kind of dynamic. But you can find these sorts of representations in many domestic film industries. These are just 2 of the biggest: China, India, Nigeria, the United States. Most countries have some sort of domestic film industry, and that's certainly true also of the Muslim world, and sometimes a country like Pakistan, for example, can struggle to get its own stories told in film when Bollywood is so powerful and so close at hand because of that exportability of culture. But the country who's really doing some interesting things internationally with popular culture is Turkey. So Turkey is, after the United States, the #1 exporter of TV dramas in the world, and the market for the Turkish dramas, the Dizi films, is quite significant. So it's estimated, for example, that 1/4 of the population in Pakistan watched Ertugrul, which is the Turkish Game of Thrones, except it's a historical drama. It's a really interesting arm of soft power from Turkey, where they're trying to show their influence with positive, strong stories of Muslim history. Because if you go back far enough in history, actually it's not that far in the great scheme of history, that a lot of the progress that's made in modern society comes from the Muslim world as opposed to from the Western world. And Ertugrul is a film, a 5-season series that's set in the time leading up to the founding of the Ottoman Empire. It's been translated into Arabic, into Spanish, into Urdu, into Russian. The country that buys the most Turkish dramas is Chile in South America. The country that pays the most to show the rights is Mexico. This is a branch of popular culture coming out of the Muslim world that we don't even really know that it is out there. But it's become interesting to foreign policy observers to see how Turkey is positioning itself with good production values, with interesting stories being told, with chaste stories being told that sort of fit with what you might call a Muslim ethos, or an Islamic ethos maybe, that sort of works and that it translates well into other cultures as well. It's an interesting thing. and one that even Foreign Policy magazine has stories on now. Lots of other countries also have their own domestic television industries. And in fact, most countries outside the United States have some sort of rule that requires a certain percentage of shows on the television network, of songs on the radio, of films in the theater to have a certain percentage of domestic content. And that's not just in the Muslim world. For example, Canada has that sort of rule where Canadian artists are guaranteed a certain part of the market. And so one way that most smaller countries, not Turkey, not Pakistan, not Nigeria, not Egypt, not the larger countries, what they do is they have that kind of protectionist rule to make sure that they can go further and do better domestically with their own audiences. So I want to talk a little bit about music and revolution. I don't want to run out of time. Boy, this picture's hilarious to me because it's such a classic boy band photo that we might have seen in the 90s, late 80s, 90s, early aughts. There's a boy band basically from Pakistan, which became one of the key elements in taking down the military dictatorship that prevailed from the late 70s through the 80s in Pakistan, leading up to a democratic revolution. And one of their songs, Dil Dil Pakistan, became this nationalist anthem that was both sounds like a boy band. Like if you listen to it, if you look up Dil Dil Pakistan, vital signs, and listen to it, you'll be like, well, this is just boy band music. It's not Muslim music. It's just sung in the local language and to those aims. But certainly the style of dress, the style of singing, you'll recognize it. There's others that are more combined. And so Junoon, I've got a link in the unit to listen to some Sufi rock and some other stuff that combines elements. But one of the things that's been interesting is the role that music has played in revolution, democratic revolution, sort of the end of Islamism and dictatorship. This is one where it'd be useful to put together the ideas in here with the ideas in Professor DeMond's talk about modules on political systems, on human rights, on democratization, because anything that has the sort of the end of dictatorship is going to have a role for music in them. So you've got hip-hop artist El General in Tunisia, very important. Lots of metal, lots of punk ending the Indonesian Suharto regime that helped democratize them. And then you have the mix of the two that we'll also have a reading about. I don't want to suggest that all is well and good with popular culture in the Muslim world, because freedom of expression is a challenge, particularly in those states. Again, if you cross-list this conversation with the ones about Islamism, about human rights, about dictatorships that still exist in the region, then you'll find a lot of state control, that there are ministries of information, departments of Islamic development, ministries of culture and Islamic government that are actually censorship boards. And if you violate anything the censorship board says once or does, you can end up in jail, as did the author of this book, this picture here in the top right-hand corner in Egypt. I had passed initially the censorship board. Someone read the book. It had a sex scene that bothered them in it. They complained to the authorities. Into jail they go, because it's a tightly controlled society, and the ones that aren't just Muslim, okay, it's not Islam, it tends to be dictatorship that has a restrictive control on media. This is internet freedom. You'll see that much of the Muslim world that's at least on the map, because the ones that are in the grayscale, they weren't measured, but the ones where the tightest control, not free, on the Freedom House survey, tend to be Muslim states that have a control. And since a lot of popular culture is shared in and through all kinds of things on social media, that is important and relevant. So if I go to these final thoughts, I don't want to suggest that Muslim culture and culture consumed by Muslims is the same thing. That if you look at culture consumed by Muslims, you'll find as wide a variety as you find in any other society, any other grouping, any other peoples, right? It's because Muslims are human beings with interests of their own and things that are their favorite, kinds of music they like, etc. You could also find things that are very unique in a particular culture. The Askia system of humorous storytelling and the art of battles of wit that are popular in Uzbekistan doesn't exist anywhere else. And so that fits in a really cool study. If we're looking at Uzbekistan or Central Asia, might not fit in these overall studies. But I do want to suggest that it's an important aspect to study, to look at popular culture in the Muslim world and see the roles that film, television, music, books, We could include food. We can include styles of dress. We can include hairstyles and other things in here. It's important. It's relevant, and I hope you take something away from the readings, this lecture, and a couple of the visual units as well.